Thank you. Okay, am I on? Okay, I am. Hi, good afternoon. I know this is right before lunch, so y'all are probably thinking about food. I'll try to make this quick, but it's not really going to be quick. So as he mentioned, I have been in PR for longer than I care to admit, and most of what I'm talking about today is geared towards folks that have smaller marketing teams, small businesses, or startups, and want to know how they can execute some PR. That's the agenda. We can probably skip through that. So I'm going to start with talking about the importance of branding. According to the US Census Bureau, there are 28 million small businesses in the country, and while they may be small, they have a big impact. As you can see, they account for 54% of all US sales, 55% of all jobs, and provide 66% of all net new jobs since the 1970s in the United States. So that's a big impact. And this doesn't even account for the startups that are in the landscape and that people may not know about yet. And everybody needs branding. All of these businesses need branding. So how much does branding matter? I'm sorry, I'm multitasking up here. If you own or work for a small business, marketing can definitely be a challenge. So how do you stand out when budgets are small and resources are so focused? It can be especially difficult when you're a startup or the smaller player in a sea of larger organizations with really big budgets, or at least bigger than yours. The first thing you've got to do is establish a consistent, noteworthy, and memorable brand. Branding goes well beyond a cool logo and fun company name. It's your voice in the marketplace, as Amy Cosper of Entrepreneur has said before, and it's your proposition for disruption. What makes you special? Why are you memorable? Brand is crucial to letting people know this and establishing your presence in the market. So a professional look and feel builds credibility, so that's important. That's usually where most people start. They get a design firm or they have someone creative on the team and they pick out their colors and they get a logo. And that's important because it inspires trust through credibility and a professional look. But recognition goes way beyond the logo. Word association is also important. A great brand makes selling easier. People buy from those that they know and like. So if you create a good brand that puts forth a promise to your audience and seems a little bit human in the way that it markets, you'll be more memorable. And it also leads to name and visual awareness. I like this quote here: branding isn't just what you tell people, but it's what you believe and what you make them believe based on the signals that your brand sends. So a great brand story taps into a target audience's emotions. And I think that in the last few months, all of which accumulated on November 9th, we've seen a couple of brands, one that's had a very emotional tact, and one that kind of lacked some emotion, I think. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. It ties your value to your brand promise, as I mentioned, so we'll talk about what a brand promise is in a second. It conveys the overall experience that people have when they interact with your brand. So not just with your marketing and PR, but with your customer service team and with your product or service. It's powerful, relevant to them and to the time that you are in and to the place that you are in. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It's memorable, and most importantly, it's consistent. You want to make people remember what you're providing, what your promise is, so it has to be consistent in order to break through all the noise that's out there. And of course, it helps build a strong and loyal customer base. Sorry, I think I went backwards. Okay. Your brand story is the underlying story that drives everything your brand does, sells, promises, and elicits. And the best brands are built on great stories. So what makes a good story? Well, that depends. First and foremost, you need a story that appeals to your audience's emotions, as I mentioned, and makes a promise. So a brand promise is a single promise that you tell or imply across all of your communications, the unique value that you deliver. Coca-Cola's promise is happiness. Everything they do, all of their commercials, even their social media, if you look at their Twitter handle, is about being happy and having fun and doing things that make you happy. Apple obviously is all about innovation. They continue to market that, even when folks feel that they're not being innovative, but that is their brand promise. Louis Vuitton, here on the bottom left, handbags and luxury goods, their promise is that you will feel special and important and luxurious. And Tom's, which of course offers a great buy one, we donate one model, is all about making lives better, enriching the lives of those that do business with them. So getting to brand position takes a couple of steps. You've got to do some of these things, and I purposely don't have a lot of visuals on here because these can seem very tedious. So this is a little bit white and black. You've got to take the time to create a good vision for your company. This is to guide your employees and everyone that works with you about what your BHAG is, your big, hairy, audacious goal. It can be almost outrageous in that it's a guiding purpose that everyone knows they're following. A good example is Pepsi, to improve all aspects of the world in which we operate. That's their vision. So that's pretty big and pretty broad. And they promise that they're going to create a better tomorrow than today. That's a lot for a beverage company, but that's their vision. It's very lofty, but it gives employees a guiding light of what the company is striving to do. Mission is a bit more practical. So for example, Warby Parker's mission is buying glasses should be easy and fun, leave you happy and good looking with money in your pocket. That's pretty clear. So a mission is a little bit more practical. It's very clear. It lets you know what you're going to get out of doing business with this brand. Uber's is to provide a crowdsourced solution to the issue of overpriced, hard-to-find taxis and revolutionize the unwieldy and monopolized taxi industry. So those are a couple of examples of good mission statements. So they're telling you exactly what they're going to do for you. And then we have the elevator pitch. So this is an even more straightforward description of what you do, and it should be clear enough that you could explain it to someone on an elevator ride and they come off that elevator understanding what you do from one or two statements. So again, using Uber as an example, they state that they connect passengers with either drivers of vehicles for hire or ride-sharing services in several cities around the world. So that's pretty clear. It's one statement. I think you can get what they do from that. So also, you need to create a positioning statement. So this is important from a competitive standpoint. You want to let your audience know where you land in the market, how you're better and different. You want to make it clear. So during this exercise, you should take into account both real and perceived competitors. So that is, you might not think that they're competitors or you've never come up against them yet, but if they can compete for your customers' attention and dollars, they should be considered a perceived competitor. So you want to talk about how you're different and better. Taglines are used on websites, logos, even email signatures. They should be short and snappy. I'll again use Uber as an example. Their tagline is, "Get there, your day belongs to you," as you can see on the bottom right. That's pretty clear and snappy. It's a dramatic but effective statement that clearly delivers their value proposition. And speaking of value proposition, it should also be clear and unique. You'll want to create 3 core messages that you or your spokespersons always share when they're talking about your brand. Why you're a leader, what's unique about you, and what's different from your competitors. This is especially important when we get to the PR part. When you speak to media or journalists, you always want to have 3 key messages that you leave them with. So you want to train your executives or your spokespersons to always leave with those 3 core messages to your brand. Okay, so it's not just enough for you to tell everyone why you're so fantastic. So to cement your brand position, you'll need proof points. Too many brands don't spend enough time on building these out and unearthing them. They can be found through conversations with customers, analysis of data, execution of a survey, or even alignment with industry statistics. So they support and prove your claims. It's not enough to just stand on your own soapbox and say how great you are. You need proof, although I wrote this before Donald Trump became president, so maybe that's an exception, but for the most part, you need proof points to what you're promising. 2 other important exercises in getting to brand position are a SWOT analysis, so taking a really deep look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, and again, real and perceived. For these exercises, I highly recommend working with a professional, maybe a consultant, or a messaging, branding, or PR agency that can take you through this exercise. It puts you in a better position if you're the internal marketing person, and it also helps get more out of your team. Because someone outside can really push, like, why is that special? Why does that make you special? So they can bring a non-Kool-Aid drinking kind of perspective to the exercise. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about key audience ID. So this is an exercise where literally you can throw up on the whiteboard or wherever it is that you're congregating, and put down all of the key audiences. So not just your customers. A lot of smaller businesses are only thinking about their customers, understandably so, but you have a lot of other audience as well. So you want to put them up. It could be journalists, it could be influencers, it could be partners, employees, VCs. So you want to put those up and define what would they want to know and what would they need to know about your brand and your company. So we'll talk about a couple of best practices here. I'm sure you have all seen this. This isn't a new example, but if you remember that your brand is your company's personality, it's got to be memorable and clear, and most importantly, consistent. Are you a serious brand? Are you a funny brand? Are you a romantic brand? You've got to be sure that your marketing content and PR campaign support and show that personality consistently. If your brand isn't one whose voice aligns with using slang or GIFs or memes, then don't use them, even if they seem like the hottest thing out there. Before you create any content, you've got to think about whether it fits your core brand identity and your overall strategy. So this is an example of Oreo, and this is an example of responsive branding, which today is an effective way of branding. It creates unique and on-demand engagements with your core audience, and thanks to social media, it's possible. So it's a very effective strategy in our always-on, ever-connected world. So during the power outage of the 2013 Super Bowl at the Superdome in New Orleans, which I'm sure you're all aware of, Oreo's ad group, the Martin Agency, immediately sent out this tweet. It's an image of a cookie, and it's in the dark with the caption, "Power out, no problem. You can still dunk in the dark." It was a huge hit. It was retweeted more than 15,000 times. So responsive branding is very effective. It doesn't have to be costly, only with your time. Keeping an eye on what's happening and quickly reacting with creative content can be time-consuming. So if you have a small team, you'll need to be sure that you have a dedicated resource to executing this kind of branding. So we'll move on and talk about PR. Oops, I keep hitting the wrong button. I'm sorry. I'm double clicking here. So publicity is, well, let me back up. If you're in a smaller business or a startup, choosing where to spend your money can be tough, and you want to make sure that you're going to do something that works. So people often ask if PR is effective. I'll be honest, there are a lot of companies that have had bad experiences with PR. There's a million agencies to choose from if you want to work with one, and even more consultants. So you may be wondering if it's effective. I put this quote up because Sir Richard Branson, obviously thinks so, and so do I, having been in it for 20 years. However, there have been a lot of rumors that PR is dead and dying, especially with the advent of social media. So let's be clear that PR is not dead. It's just definitely changed a lot. And if anything, it's more important and easier to execute than ever. So we'll talk about what is PR anyway. As I mentioned, it's changed a lot, especially over the last 10 years. As social media gave every company a new way to engage directly with influencers, customers, and prospects, and create their own content and do their own kind of PR and marketing through social media. So you'll see a lot of different agencies overlapping now, so marketing, branding, advertising, and PR. But I believe that PR is at the end of all of that list. The PR team is the one that takes everything you're creating, your messaging, your content, your visuals, and promoting it to the world. And the important part there is that a PR professional, or if you're doing it yourself, knows your audience and knows what they want and need, and can create a relationship with them quickly and keep them engaged. So with social and digital work, the role of PR spans many different areas now. It can include what most people identify PR with, which is media relations, but that's only part of it. It also includes industry awards, speaking, events, news releases, customer communication and conferences, social media management, and even digital production like video, website development. PR firms are getting into that now as well. Content creation, ghostwriting, media training, the list goes on. It also now includes data analytics for anyone who actually cares what they're spending their PR investment on. I did it again, I'm sorry. So PR, obviously stands for public relations, but at the end of the day, because it's the part of marketing that promotes your brand, you've got to relate to your target audience and show them that you understand their wants and needs. So a good PR executive understands how to do this, whether it's a journalist, an analyst, a customer, or even a prospect, even a VC. A lot of times PR companies will help with the messaging and the visuals for a startup's investor deck. So a good PR executive knows how to read people. They also know how to take the time to engage and not just push out promotional materials. So nobody wants to listen to or take recommendations from someone that they can't relate to. So if you think of PR as a relationship, you'll be off to a good start. It's not rocket science, but it does take investment. It takes a decent budget, a dedicated team or resource, even if it's just one person. Hopefully it's not the business owner, but sometimes it is. And creative storytelling. That's really the crux of good PR. It also takes time. A lot of folks want to hire an agency, have them create a big blow up and have that be it. But PR is an ongoing investment. It's telling an ongoing story that continues to evolve as your company does. So where to start? Always start outside of marketing. So many companies forget this when they sit down to do their marketing plan. They don't even talk about their business goals. Business goals should be first and foremost what you share with your marketer or marketing team and your PR team. They have to understand where you're trying to get and how they can help support that. What are you trying to accomplish? Work backwards from there to build a PR strategy. If you use the SMART plan, you'll create specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound goals. Very important for communicating with your team what you expect. Your plan should include and outline what tools you'll use, so everything from social media to visual content, and how you'll manage the effort. Again, PR is not good on autopilot. It's got to be managed. You have to decide if you're going to hire an employee, if you're going to hire an agency, or maybe a PR consultant would be a good place to start. And finally, make sure that you include measurement, as I mentioned, to determine how your investment is paying off. You have to pay attention to what's having the greatest impact so you can repeat what's working and pivot from what isn't. I've seen a lot of companies invest a lot in PR and not only not really sit down and identify concrete goals with their team or their agency, but never measure a benchmark, never create a benchmark and measure against it. And I don't know any other part of the business where someone doesn't want to know what their investment is getting them. So measurement today in PR is a big growing area. I am slightly biased because of my software company, that's what we do, but if you go out and just Google PR measurement, or right now if you're on Twitter, you can look at the hashtag #MeasurePR. It's a Twitter chat that happens one Thursday a month. If you're interested in how to measure your investment, I recommend following it. There's a lot of really smart people on that chat. Okay, just looking at the time here. So must-haves. There are, of course, several different elements to a successful PR strategy, but ultimately, it's the ability to tell good stories. And not everything your business does is interesting. I know that sounds rude, but it's true. And it's also one of the biggest pain points for a PR executive when owner, CEO, VP, CMO, whoever it is in charge, wants to announce everything that you do. We want to announce our new website. We want to announce our new hire. We want to announce our new product. Some of those things are relevant and important, and some of them aren't. So you've got to think about stepping outside of your own head sometimes and think about what interests you to see from other companies. Do you care that they have a new website? Do you care that they hired a new product marketing person? So step out of your own head and think about what's interesting to you, and then work backwards from there about your own publicity. Determine who the key players will be who are involved, which executives will be spokespersons. I highly recommend that they are media trained if you'll be talking to journalists or bloggers or influencers of any kind. At the most simplistic level, step back a couple slides and give them those core 3 messages. explain to them what NDA means, things that they shouldn't be talking about with journalists, and that off the record doesn't really ever exist. So make sure they know that. If you do need media training, I do highly recommend finding a qualified trainer and investing in a session at least once with your spokespersons with them. And again, put work into identifying your differentiators, what's special about your business, how do you tie that into a compelling, ongoing story? Are you the innovative company like Apple? Are you a customer service obsessed brand? Or do you own the majority of the market? And if so, why? But no matter your size, you have to find a special angle and a sweet spot that is the narrative of your ongoing story. And last but not least, timing is also crucial for an effective campaign. If you're releasing news, for example, you'll want to make sure that you're not competing with other things in your industry, maybe a competitor's customer conference, maybe inbound, or maybe even an election. So you want to take a look at the calendar before you define what your timing is, especially for news. People remember, first and foremost, how you make them feel. And they love brands that make them feel good. If I think of a brand that makes me feel good, I think of LL Bean. And I think of JetBlue, which I know is kind of ironic because it's an airline and nobody likes flying and the airline business. But I do believe, mostly from their marketing content and their customer service, that they really care about making your experience better than most. So your story should start from that consideration. How will you make your audience feel? Are they going to be taken care of? Will they be nostalgic, excited, empowered? So all of your stories, whether in your ads, social content, press releases, or other PR, even media pitches, should support this underlying feeling. Another great example is Budweiser. Budweiser wants you to feel happy and like you belong, and you're taken care of. So they have commercials, marketing content, PR, whether it's a puppy leading a horse home, as you saw a couple Super Bowls ago, or if it's a bunch of friends hanging out and you feel really special, the content always has that underlying story and that underlying feeling. So what makes a good PR story can vary. It depends on your business, your audience, what you have to offer, but it usually has one or more of these elements. And in addition, if you're pitching a story to a journalist, it has to be relevant to what they write and for whom they write. You've got to do your homework and understand that the kind of stories that they're looking for, sometimes it's easier than others, but this is the #1 complaint from journalists about anyone doing PR. Do you even read what I write? It's amazing, it keeps happening. I've been on the end of PR pitches as well for some of the blogs that I write. I usually write about business, tech, women in business, STEM careers, and I will get pitches for, I think the last one was a baby diaper, which you would never see that on anything that I write. So you've got to make sure that you take the time to read whoever it is, whatever journalist or blogger or influencer is writing about. And there's no excuse not to know that today. All you have to do is look at their Twitter handle or their Facebook page. If they don't have a website, you could still find that information out. So again, get out of your own head. Who is the story for? Why will they care? It's not just about direct promotion anymore. You have to relate to people about topics they care about first. Blatant promotion on just your products and services really doesn't work anymore. If you create content about topics that your audience cares about, if you create content on things that are going to help me and be a resource to me, I'm going to want to keep coming back to learn something more. And then when you tie in your products or services to those things that you've been talking about that I care about and that you helped me with, I'm going to be more receptive to your message and listen to you. So make sure that you're thinking about how you're taking care of your audience first. So if you have limited resources and you can only pick a handful of things, here's what I suggest. Definitely social media. It's very often free. By and far the best thing that's happened to marketing in a long time, in my opinion. It obviously offers inexpensive ways to reach a mass audience when it's done correctly. And you can expand your audience beyond what was once kind of regionally captive and become an influencer yourself in ways that weren't possible. Don't count out traditional media relations, as I was just talking about. Although many people say its demise is near, I don't believe that. It still remains a very influential form of PR and the #1 thing that companies call agencies and ask for. might be tied with social media today, but still media relations is very important. That third-party credibility that it brings really emphasizes and raises the awareness of your brand. Media still carries weight, even if they just write about you but don't blatantly endorse you. It's still by association a very positive thing for your brand, unless it's a bad review, for example, but most of the time it's a pretty positive thing. And writing yourself, blogging, I still think is very important. Using key terms and being smart about the content that you're writing. WordPress and other platforms are very helpful at giving you guidelines and telling you that your headline should be shorter or longer. So there's no excuse for not doing some writing from that perspective. Another great strategy to having your blog extend your reach is to have guest bloggers or guest interviews. You can do this very easily, paying attention to influencers. Obviously, they should be associated and connected to what you do and your industry. But you can send them a Q&A, set 10 questions in email, ask for their picture, and boom, you've got an extended audience because they are going to say, hey, you guys, I'm over here, look at this blog, and they're going to extend that to their network as well. So you've just probably doubled the audience that will see it. So that's a great strategy for blogging, and it's easy and a little bit less time consuming than always writing your own. So those are the three things that if you only have one person or it's just you and you're the business owner, if you can try to do these three things, those are the ones that I would recommend. So PR can be a little bit intimidating, but if you really want it to work, you'll dedicate the resources to it. So it just takes focus. It does take time. It doesn't have to be complicated. Definitely takes time to invest in relationships. Humanize your approach. A lot of people think, or brands get intimidated, like, I can't say that. That's not something a company should say. But it's actually the opposite today. People want to connect with brands in a way that they feel like they're being heard. And so the more human you can make your brand, interacting with people on Twitter or answering something on Facebook, the more likely they're going to feel emotionally connected. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because we're on time. So if you are a small business or a startup or an individual entrepreneur, you've probably faced these challenges. I can relate. I've been there. As I mentioned, I've started and run a small business, and I'm currently in the middle of a bootstrap startup. So I know what it's like to have to be more creative with your money, your time, and your marketing, including trying to navigate the never-ending sea, because that is a lot of brands up there, of recommended tools and vendor pitches. Obviously, companies like HubSpot do a lot of top lists and explain other tools and products, but it can get overwhelming. So you've just got to take a look at first your budget and then your needs. If you buy a great piece of software but you don't have time to manage it, then you're probably wasting your money. So taking a look at that, asking colleagues, and looking at what influencers may recommend. And once you do, how do you find the time to educate agencies or vendors, provide feedback for creative content, ensure its successful execution? It does take a lot of time. However, you do have options for help. You could hire someone in-house or as a consultant. You can hire an agency, which I'm being kind here with the price on the agencies. They can go way north of this depending, but I'm trying to keep it focused on the small business startup audience and be realistic. Or you can do it yourself, which just means you have to dedicate the time and resources. So each have costs, not just money, but time. So no matter what you choose, make sure you have a good mix of what really matters. Again, news, make sure it's meaningful. So many people associate PR with putting a press release out there. A lot of us in PR don't want to do press releases at all anymore. They're really helpful for boards, investors. You can put them on your website. But as a smaller business or a smaller team, I would think carefully about the investment of putting it across the wire. Some people don't understand how putting it across something, when I say the wire, it's like Business Wire or PR News Wire. You pay to have them distribute your press release. That goes to media and journalists. So it's a wider reach, but you can also, if you have a direct and niche focus, you can make those pitches yourself. So you've got to pick and choose when you're on a budget. Let's see, proof points we talked about. facts and figures, so that's also proof points, but also in the data-centric world, are there other things that you can associate yourself with? So looking around to how you can take facts and figures and apply them to your business and your stories, or create topical, timely, and unique stories of your own. So I've tried a lot of tools myself. There are some amazing things out there, like HubSpot, obviously, which I assume most of you have used or tried since you're here. But when you're watching the bottom line closely, sometimes you need some additional options that can enhance your campaigns without adding additional budget. There are a lot of free or inexpensive tools out there. So these are some of my favorites. I love the WordPress platform for blogging, MailChimp for newsletters. It's very easy to use. They have great templates. They're really great in their own marketing, so they help you out a lot with ideas and content. For media, so this is you pursuing media relations yourself. Bylines are a great way to get coverage these days. Journalists are becoming fewer and fewer, staffs are getting smaller, and a lot of industry publications especially will welcome an article written by you or your CEO. It's a great way to get your key message out there because you can write about, not about your own product or an author, you're raising your credibility, you're establishing thought leadership, and you're implying that you can help them with this problem. So I recommend if you've never pitched a media outlet before that you go to see if they, on their website, will welcome what's called bylines or contributed articles. These are something you can do a lot. News, I still think is important. It's important to demonstrate that your company is growing, that it's coming over milestones, those sorts of things. And then comments. So this is something that is really effective. A lot of people don't think much about this, but if you're a small business or a startup and you don't have a lot to put into marketing and promotion, one thing you can do is track your industry publications. You can track what people are writing about. So I'll give you an example. I follow PR analytics or PR measurement. There was an article a while back that one of our competitors actually wrote. He wrote a byline, and I left a comment on the bottom of it. And we actually just closed a new customer last week because of that comment. So this person read the article, saw my comment, and we are competitors, so checked out both of us and gave us a call. So if you follow what people are writing about and leave your comments, leave a professional opinion or thought leadership point of view, it can raise awareness, and it's also searchable by Google, so it helps with SEO. The best thing I would say about that is to always leave a consistent tagline or name signature at the end. So not just your name, but include your Twitter handle or include your website and make it consistent every time you leave a comment. And then we already talked about social media, but these are some of my favorites. It depends on the type of business that you have, of course. Okay. Oh, sorry, I want to go back for 1 minute. In addition to social media tools, I forgot to mention this, you'll want to invest in publishing and monitoring tools, so things like Buffer or Hootsuite. I'm partial to Buffer. It's really easy to use. It allows you to post updates across many different social channels, and you can schedule them. So if Sunday night before your week starts, you can dedicate an hour to finding interesting articles to share or writing a blog. You can then go post them on Buffer to come out at certain times during the week. So it's a great way, again, as a small business or a small team, to have a resource that can do some extra work for you when your week gets busy. That'll still be running along. There are also things, so in addition to media approaches, also signing up and using services like HARO, H-A-R-O. It's Help a Reporter Out. And basically, it's a multiple times a day email that you can receive where journalists say, hey, I'm writing this story, I need this type of resource. And you can pitch yourself or pitch your boss or whatever it is. It has healthcare, travel, technology, higher education, any topic you can think of. And it's a great way to get your name out there and start to build up some thought leadership. Again, it's a free tool. It doesn't cost you anything but time. ProfNet also offers a similar service, although theirs is not free, and that's PROFNET. Okay, so I was going to put some case studies together, but then I thought there's one that I think encompasses a lot of what we've talked about today. But first, I'm going to explain what a challenger brand is. So a challenger brand is a company or a product brand in an industry that is not the category leader. So I'm assuming that's a lot of you since you're here and you read the description of what this talk was going to be about, focused on small businesses or startups and taking on Goliath. I've helped build a lot of challenger brands and promote a lot of challenger brands, some of which took on the likes and some of which were then acquired by companies like WebEx, Salesforce, IBM. These are small businesses competing with these companies with huge budgets. A lot of what we did was piggyback on a lot of what they did. We would show up wherever they are. We would be kind of like an annoying fly all of the time. We would even send a representative to do some things outside of their conferences, for example. So that would be like a marketing company hanging out front of Inbound or or their customer conference. So being a successful challenger encompasses a mindset and a certain number of behaviors. It means being able to clearly articulate exactly who you are and what you stand for with confidence. And this comes from your purpose and values and not what norms dictate. So as a challenger brand, you're going to have to do some more creative things. Your marketing is going to be a little bit off color sometimes, so that you can really amp up that brand awareness and get that attention. And I thought that Donald Trump was a great challenger brand. Now, he is not necessarily a small business, obviously, but he wasn't a politician when he started. And he's a very timely example of a challenger brand because his PR and political campaign ran on a couple of things that we just talked about. So, enticing people's emotions. He did a great job at that. Whether they were positive or negative, people were emotionally touched by him, and they remembered what he did and how he made them feel. Challenger brands don't play to the norm. I think this is why he won. He didn't play to the norm, even under tremendous pressure to do so. Videotapes leaking and all of these things coming out, he didn't change his behavior. He said, I'm going to be the anti-establishment, and that's what he promised his audience, and that's what everything he did conveyed. Nothing was normal with this campaign. So challenger brands don't follow the rules. I think we know that he didn't necessarily follow the political rules, and in the end, it worked out for him, and nobody really thought that it would. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. The media and obviously the polls at the beginning didn't think that it would work out for him, but not following the rules did work. And they demand customers' attention. Challenger brands demand your attention, and I think we can all agree that Donald Trump's campaign certainly did that. So being a challenger isn't necessarily about being small. It's about being bold enough to be different and single-minded about what you want to achieve. So think about that in your business. What is it that we want to achieve in 6 months, in 12 months? How are we going to be bold, and are we going to be a little off color to make it happen? Smaller businesses with smaller marketing departments and less resources have to be more creative. So we'll talk about a framework for PR really quickly. A good framework is almost self-sustaining, so it's not something you can put on autopilot, but it is something that you can then use repeatedly once you've established it. You've got to put some thought into it. So key elements. Visual content, as most of you know, marketing content with visuals is much more likely to get engaged with, to grab attention. These are a couple of examples that my PR agency actually created years ago for clients. But we created original visual content. You can also piggyback on other visual content today. All those tools that I mentioned earlier, like Buffer, make it very easy. They even give you images in Buffer that you can use and put your own words on now. You can create infographics with some of those other free tools that I mentioned. But visual content draws people in, and this is why Pinterest is so popular. People like to share visuals, especially memes. So, if you are a company that doesn't align with memes, as I mentioned earlier, you can still do some things that are original visual content through all these great tools. You can piggyback on user-generated content and include their voices. People love this, especially in a B2C business. It's a little bit different in B2B, but in B2C, people are going to share things if you include them in it. Consumers love it when brands engage with them and include, let's think about the Doritos advertising contest a few years ago, a few Super Bowls ago. They said, hey guys, what would you create if you were going to create an ad for us? You have an opportunity for us to pick your ad and be on TV. They got thousands and thousands of people creating ads for them and giving them free ideas and putting them up on YouTube with their brand. It was brilliant, really, really smart. So people, user-generated content, people are going to share that, and they're going to give you ideas. So engage with them and encourage them to do that and include their voices. It increases not only your amount of content, but it further engages your audience. And I'm sorry, I have a little mistake there. Make sure you create a calendar, so not just your own timeline, but take a look at Hallmark holidays, for example, industry events, things like that. And definitely, if you have a team, if it's more than one, include assignments and include deadlines. I've seen a lot of really amazing social content calendars come out, blogging calendars with assignments but no deadlines. People don't do them. That's not their day job. They're more than likely not going to do them. So definitely include deadlines. And lastly, empower your brand advocates. So these can be your employees, customers, partners, or even just your fans. Give them tools to share your brand's voice and message across social media. So that can include shareable content, social media guidelines that you provide for employees. Appoint an employee advocate who engages others and sets an example, someone who really is excited about helping the company grow, gets the messaging, understands why it's important. They can not only create content, but they can inspire others to become advocates as well. Non-negotiables with a PR framework, business goals. I know I said it earlier, but I'll say it again, make sure it aligns with your business goals and it's purposeful and supporting them. It's helpful to do a PR assessment or an audit of what you've been doing in the past, if anything. If the answer is nothing, then great, that's your benchmark. That's a really great benchmark to start with. Nothing. But if you've done anything in the past, or there was a team before you, or an agency before you, do an assessment, do an audit of what they've been doing, what the engagement was like, and work from there. So you're creating a benchmark. Then create your PR plan. I like to recommend, in this day and age, no more than 6 months at a time. People can create 12 months of content and plans, and in 3 months it could be irrelevant. So I suggest doing it no more than 6 months ahead of time. Obviously, you need to include your goals and how you're going to accomplish them, your budget, and what tools you're going to use. Your team might bring new tools to the table as you go along, but for the most part, you want your voice and your brand look and feel to be consistent, so you're going to want the team to use the same tools and not kind of be off on their own using all the free stuff that's out there. So you need to focus and help them, because then they're not out there doing research that you've already done, things like that. And then the team and assignments. Make sure you're clear on who's doing what. If you have multiple people being the voice of your brand, I suggest giving them some guidelines on the type of brand you are. Again, this goes back to the beginning of the brand positioning, those sorts of things. And then measure. I mentioned measurement and analytics. When I say measure, it's really important to clarify that I mean measure what matters. Nobody wants to do this. Nobody wants to throw money out the window. So make sure you have measurement strategies in place to analyze the success of your programs and investments. Don't measure possibilities. So there's a lot of people that care about impressions or the circulation of an outlet or the number of followers. That doesn't mean the number of followers saw everything that you gave to this influencer. So make sure you're using tools that help you measure what matters. Google Analytics can be your best friend. It can seem daunting, but if you find a specialist or an agency, they can help you. And I'm out of time, so I'll leave this additional resources slide up. Reach me on Twitter. I'm happy to talk to anyone anytime. Thank you so much.